Chris. Oh, sorry, I call Gareth Hughes. I was nearly there until I
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Hughes,
I don't think you can call for a third umpire, Mr. Farfoy, though it probably would be useful to have a third umpire sometimes in this House. Mr. Chair, kia ora, ngamihi nui kia koutou, kia ora, I rise to support this bill, the Radio New Zealand Amendment Bill. Mr. Chair, I've been reflecting since the original review where this legislation comes out from, and all the way back in 2006, what changes we've seen at Radio New Zealand. Now, the first one, of course, is it's not called Radio New Zealand, it's now RNZ. We've seen some innovative new online content platforms, such as the wireless. Of course, we've lost old Jeff and Sean on Morning Report, but we've gained a Guyon and a Susie. We've seen a new checkpoint streaming live to the internet, interviews now being conducted by Skype, not just in the Auckland or Wellington or Dunedin studios. But Mr. Speaker, despite all those changes since the Radio New Zealand review all the way back in 2006, one thing is the same. That's the bird, every morning on Morning Report, which is fantastic to see. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is an entirely non-controversial bill. The subject matter at its heart is incredibly important, which is public broadcasting. It's something the Green Party, and judging by the speeches I've heard in the House tonight and previously from Chris Farfoy, Claire Curran, Tracy Martin, it's something this side of the House takes incredibly seriously. Importance to our culture, to our citizenship, and to our democracy. So the Green Party supports public broadcasting. The changes to the Charter aren't bringing great change. You could say they're modernising. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to touch on the point, which is the speed and urgency which the government has moved this legislation through the House. As I referred to, the review was in 2006, legislation not introduced to 2009, and here we are, 10 years after the 5-yearly review, we're finally getting around to the committee stage. We're not even at the third reading stage. And my question to the government and the minister is the speed and haste with which the government is addressing this legislation symptomatic of the government's view towards public broadcasting? If you're taking it seriously, why have you acted so slowly? If you take it seriously, why has there been a funding freeze for 6 years? If you're taking it so seriously, why don't you listen to the KPMG report, which said we had seen a funding cut requiring an additional $6.7 million just to stay where they are, and what we have seen is a funding cut in real terms of more than 9%. You've got to ask the question, does the government take public broadcasting seriously when we see channels like Channel 7 being cut? Now, Mr. Speaker, this side of the House takes public broadcasting seriously, and my challenge to the government is, if you're going to take it seriously, let's move some haste, let's put some adequate funding in so the excellent work that happens at RNZ, concert, etc., can continue and thrive in 2016. I'd like to make a couple of quick points on the supplementary order papers. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the member Claire Curran for her constructive clarification amendments. The Green Party will be supporting the government's amendments, and they in fact relate to my substantive point, which is the slow lethargy in which the government has approached passing this legislation. Now, some of the main amendments in the government's SOP, new section 8AB, deals with providing media services outside New Zealand on, for example, paid content services, that as long as the services are still in a commercial-free manner, they can be then subsequently replayed or broadcast or on-sold to what are essentially commercial stations. We support that. And why I say it's symptomatic of the lethargy of the point is the government has had to play catch-up. The world is changing. We're seeing it with the content review currently being undertaken by Minister Adams. The world is catching up. The government's trying to play catch-up with the new technology, the new type of services, the new role that Radio New Zealand is expected to play in 2016. So the Green Party will be supporting it because it is pretty common sense. New Clause 2, of course, has to change the commencement date. The government's taken so long to get this bill in front of the House that they've had to go amend the commencement date because, of course, it's expired. So the Green Party supports this common sense law. The Green Party supports the common sense supplementary order papers. But the important point for the Green Party is we will prioritise public broadcasting. We believe it's the bedrock, the foundation of our democracy, of New Zealand's right to access information, to hear our stories, to see our culture in all the various forms on air and online. Our last quick point is I'd also like to acknowledge, Mr. Chair.
Gareth Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very briefly because my last point is around acknowledging the recent Māori Radio Network's call and analysis of Māori content on RNZ. Now, when you look at the data, it was only over a small time period. It is incredibly small. So I believe that's a challenge to RNZ to make sure that all New Zealanders and all cultures' voices are reflected, in particular the First People of New Zealand, tangata whenua, and I hope RNZ can take those lessons, that analysis on board. Kia ora, Mr. Chair.